Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of RT Talk. I am Michael Cool, and this week we're going to be talking about just a few subjects. If you've been listening to Out in the Grapes, which is kind of our side podcast that we do, then you'll know that this last week was my bachelor party weekend, like extended weekend. So most of my time this past 2 weeks have been preparing for that, being away, and then kind of recovering from that. So I only have a couple topics. I do feel like it's sort of the highlights of the last 2 weeks, but I have been sort of away and not really paying attention to anything that's been happening in the world. So, right out of the gate, we're going to talk about everything that's been going on with Torrian Crawford, the former Red vs. Blue director that has been making a lot of comments and has kind of has stirred up the community a little bit with events of this past week. We're going to talk about the fact that CHUMP is ending, and then just kind of going briefly over one of those cool little side things, or I guess cool is sort of subjective, and I don't know if maybe people won't like it, but I don't know. It's one of the little side projects that RT did that I just thought was kind of came out of nowhere, but I thought was kind of cool. So let's get right into all the Taurian Crawford stuff. Now, this is one of the stories that it's kind of difficult for me sometimes to get to the bottom of where it started, or what kind of kicked it off, other than maybe I can only basically speculate on sort of how it started. In this instance, I think this must have started just because, and I guess just for background and clarity, Torrian Crawford was the director of RvB 0, which I believe is the most recent season of Red vs. Blue. He left the company, I don't remember exactly when it was a couple months ago, but he left the company, so he's no longer there. But I'm kind of left to speculate where this started, so I'm just assuming that this has been something that's come up where people have been sort of criticizing or attacking him or threatening him, as is the case with the internet, because that's what people do for whatever reason. But I'm just assuming that this has been going on for some time, and that he kind of just sort of got sick of it, and again, being away from RT for so long, it's probably been building. It's probably been sort of like a volcano, just slowly rising. But he did make a statement after. And it's, again, this is kind of hard to nail down every single reply, because he was replying to certain people. He was making comments, and basically talked about how the RvB kind of fan base is sort of toxic and everything. So his statement's a little bit long, but since we have so few subjects to talk about this week, I'm actually going to go through and read the whole thing. So if you're watching this, it's up on the screen right now. But so again, his statement here starts with last comment on this, because it seems like some of you think you can say anything you want to me through DMs and emails. So obviously this has a much longer history than just this statement, but this is sort of the statement that brought it on my radar, and sort of it popped up on the RT subreddit, and this is sort of where it seems that things have kicked off to like where they are now. But so that was the first line. So it continues with, what the RvB fan base doesn't know, because they don't ever have any context, so they are just left to speculate all the time, is that we were the only peeps that wanted to work on the RvB show. Let's get the OGs and add some new peeps and do something new and cool for the fan base. I said, for fuck's sake, our test footage has Griff and Simmons in it. Tucker had a whole fight scene. The show opened with Caboose. Then a lot of RT stuff and decision making out of our control happened, so maybe use your group powers to actually get some real answers about your show. Before continuing on this, the only thing, and I should also say this too, is I've never been a big RvB fan, even going back, because I've been, for anyone who's been watching or listening to the show for a while, maybe you already know this, but I became a fan around like 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. So back when it was all the original people, and the company was kind of hitting this huge kind of upward trajectory. I can't speak. Upward path. So I kind of like, that's around whenever I jumped in. So even back then, I never really got into the RvB, and weirdly, RvB is how I know about Rooster Teeth, even though it's I don't know. But I never really got into it, so I don't really have like a horse in the race when it comes to RvB and how good or bad a season was. I can only assume that people are blaming him for a lot of the things that they didn't like. But to continue, as far as my ability to take criticism, I take it from my peers, people who are better than me, people who have tons of experience, people who are grooming me to work on films and TV shows. I have fell into depression working on getting better and better. 3 a.m. on the floor reading, practicing. Hell, I have deleted whole scenes and started from scratch because of feedback and replaced myself in creative situations with those I thought were way more capable than myself. So, again, this is another one that I kind of, it's just based on like strictly what is written here, and not based on like his job of directing RvB. I do think it's you should expand how you take criticism. Now, I'm not saying that he should be listening to some of the people that he's getting harassed by any means, but I think if you narrow down your criticism from peers, people who are better than you and people who have tons of experience, obviously you should take their experience, or their input rather, to be at like a higher level, and maybe consider it more than you would if it was just anyone else. But just because someone doesn't have animation experience or experience in the industry doesn't necessarily mean that what they're saying is immediately invalidated. I just find that, just again, based on strictly what is typed there, I find that to be a little off. But I feel like I'm a really nice, chill, and humble guy, and I chose to take on the show, so I take all responsibility for it because I'm a professional and that's what a leader does. But I 100p don't care about your shit take or opinion, but I am petty enough to respond to it while waiting on an oil change. P.S. For all of you who didn't like it, which is perfectly okay, and got so much shit to say, your company wanted me to keep working on it, but I passed. So maybe it's them you should be sending threats to, as they focus more on TikToks instead of, at the very least, bringing you all into the loop. So, the last sentence, yeah, he's obviously sort of saying, kind of throwing some of the blame on Rooster Teeth and saying you should be taking up with them, essentially. Which, again, is I don't think that's without merit, that if there's a lot of things you don't like. Let me even just back up further than that, because I've sort of picked out like certain points that he made that I sort of had an issue with, but overall, I don't believe that anyone should be harassed for working on something, even if you didn't like it. I don't think you should be threatened. I don't think there should be I don't think anyone should have that type of reaction to an animated show being less than what they expected. I don't even know how else to phrase that, but I do find that to be sort of, it is a big issue with the internet, and obviously there's also a big issue on the internet with people just thinking they have all the answers, and I think isn't that Dunning-Kruger, I believe. I'm sure someone will probably let me know down with in the comments and reply to this, but I believe Dunning-Kruger is having like this a belief in your abilities or in your reasoning and everything beyond what your actual scope of abilities is. So you have much more confidence in your opinion or what you're saying or what you're doing than you actually hold. But maybe that's completely wrong. Either way, there's a lot of people who just jump to conclusions, and there's a lot of people who just will take cursory information and then they just run with it, and then they'll just go from there and just extrapolate this all into this whole entire world that they've created, and like they're not even interested in finding out what the truth is. It's one of the reasons why in doing this show I try to be very careful about how I word things and not getting too far in one direction or the other, because when it comes down to it, I just honestly don't know. I'm not there. I wasn't part of these conversations. I don't even watch RvB, so I don't even know what some of the complaints are. So I try not to be too harsh in one direction or the other for that exact reason, because I don't know. But some people don't care about that. I mean, it's literally how conspiracy theories are formed. You take it's like surface level information, and then you just start extrapolating. You start connecting dots that aren't there, and this puzzle piece could fit, but doesn't go to the right puzzle. So it's just such a problem with just the internet and people in general who think like that. So absolutely, I think he's completely validated in saying that you should take it up with the company in certain regards. And if there's something you have criticism for, then, maybe consider what the possibilities could be before you just sort of attack everybody who is involved with it. And I will say that there was some people who were replying talking about how they just, now again, who knows how accurate this is because this person's been removed, but there was people who were saying that they just left general criticism of the new season, and those people were blocked or banned or what have you. Everyone that's on the, like, or most people that are going to give you criticism on the internet are going to be very extreme. So it gives you so much trash that you have to, like, wade through to actually find the few pieces of it that are good. But I don't know. There just seems to be, like, this new, I guess, movement that is happening of people that are just getting rid of all people who say something negative about them. And again, I'm not even sure that that's what he's doing, so I'm kind of just speaking in general, not specifically about Torrian, but it's sort of a thing that's been happening. So it's like when I see that, I do kind of understand where those people are coming from, where if they did just have a general criticism, and I do have a slight tendency to believe what they're saying, only because I know other forms of criticism have been so harshly attacked when it comes to RvB, or, you know, if you post anything on the RT site or on the subreddit that is typically is that negative, almost guaranteed you're just going to be downvoted and possibly kicked off, or your post will be deleted or what have you. So it's something that I've seen before. It's not something that happens for every single post like that, but it does seem to be their sort of, it's like becoming their default almost, or it's getting closer, which to me is just a little concerning, because you have to have criticism. You have to be able to, allow people to voice their opinion on something. You're making something that people care about. And if you're making something that people care about, then they're going to have opinions when it goes a direction that they don't like anymore. I mean, that's just the nature of anything. I mean, people really like the Marvel series, and there's certain movies that they don't, and they'll voice their opinions on it, or a decision that was made. You know, look at Star Wars. Star Wars was one of the most beloved, you know, series, or, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, entities that exists, and there's a lot of it that people shit all over because they really care about it. Now, obviously there is a line, and if you cross that line into threatening people or just being complete dog shit, I mean, I've even our YouTube channel, I've blocked several people who are just there to kind of harass, more or less. They're not really there leaving a, you know, they're leaving like an opposite opinion or like trying to have a conversation. It's more so they're just trying to shit on someone or us or whoever. So it's like, well, that's not productive. So, you know, I don't need that. But if someone just is voicing an opinion, I have no problem leaving them in there and letting that sort of play out. And, you know, I've seen things like this happening where they've been, it seems like any form of criticism has been shut down by, you know, I'm not going to like sit here and say like everybody at RT has done it, but it's a pattern that I've noticed more now than I ever have. Now, it's possible maybe this is a change at RT, or maybe this is a change in just how people are interacting online, and, you know, who knows. But overall, I think with the Taurian thing, you know, I having not seen the show, I don't have any, like, I can't really speak to how, like, good, or, you know, I don't have an opinion on how good or bad of a job that he did. Everything I've seen from RvB Zero has looked like crazy, you know, insane animation, looks well done. Obviously we're in this time in RT where things are changing and they're shifting, and it's turning a lot of people off. I mean, I've even noticed an uptick in posts on the RT subreddit, which again has been generally a very positive place for anyone who is a fan of RT. I have noticed that there's been more posts about people saying how certain content has grown stale, or, you know, things aren't really working, like, or, you know, maybe not working, but they're not really like appealing to them anymore. And, you know, again, there's a lot of factors. Maybe people are just aging out. Maybe the content is changing. Who knows? But it does seem like there's an uptick in people who are just sort of, man, they're just falling off. And that's a lot of the comments we get too, are people just saying that how they don't watch anymore, or they haven't watched in a while, and they just check in to see like what's going on at the company anymore. I think part of that's a pandemic. Obviously, part of that has to be, you know, the leadership that's in place now, because it's run by a completely different set of people. So things are going to be different. I mean, if you watch sports, I don't think this is any different. It's, you know, a new general manager has taken over, and they're making trades, they're signing, you know, they're making all kinds of decisions that are very different from the last person. So, yeah, it's just I don't know. It just seems like a continuous situation where someone leaves RT, and then there's a negative sort of, I don't know, a reaction to being there. There's a negative, I don't know, it's like a negative cloud is just over top of that person's experience there. And I don't feel like maybe I was just completely in the dark before. I don't feel like that was always the case, but it's certainly something that has been happening more and more. But to get to the next part is because there's a second part of this whole sort of, I guess, hubbub is I think, I don't know if it's either Sean Hinz or Hinz. It's Hinz. He is the co-head of animation at Rooster Teeth. He also put out a statement, and again, it's a little bit longer, but this is basically all we have to talk about for the most part. So I'm just gonna I'll go read through this real fast too. So he posted something. Actually, we just posted it today as of this recording. So it says, "Hey internet, for those meeting me for the first time through this letter, my name is Sean Hinz. I don't know. My name is Sean, and I am the co-head of animation at Rooster Teeth. I am a part of the leadership behind shows you know and love like Death Battle, RvB, and Red vs. Blue. I recognize for the community this past weekend has been a little rough, and I wanted to take a minute to address some of the conversations around RvB. First and most importantly, Rooster Teeth is incredibly proud of what Torrian Crawford and the RvB Zero team accomplished in bringing the series back in a whole new way. Yes, it's different, with its own valid criticisms, so it may not vibe with some of y'all. That's okay. We're learning from the experience and embracing the opportunity by continuing to empower creative voices with new projects like Family Shatters. And we are uncompromising in our commitment to foster a community that is diverse, welcoming, and respectful, both inside and outside of our organization. We cannot and will not back down from creating with purpose and entertaining with originality. In general, I think it's okay to dislike things and to voice that opinion wherever you're most comfortable, but let's be abundantly clear, that's not okay, or what's not okay is to harass or threaten anyone about it. We stand by our code of conduct and community guidelines. Harassing or threatening staff, creators, or other community members is unacceptable. This is not just about this one show, but everything we create here. Creating is an incredibly vulnerable act. It is both selfish and selfless at the same time. What I see in Torian's post from Saturday is that some people are spending too much time trying to undo something that is already done, and doing so in a harmful way that has had an unacceptable impact on the health of a close friend and colleague. So, in general, I mean, I feel like it's pretty much just a rehash of the community guidelines. We're not, we don't accept harassment. It's okay to have an opinion. It's for the most part, that's what he's saying, or at least that's what I gather from it. At the very bottom it says, do not threaten any content creators or community members, period, even if you do not like what they create. The second part says, to be clear, season 18 happened because the founders believe in Torrian, and we set out to make something fresh, challenging the status quo. Production in the pandemic took that challenge and made it extra, but I am frankly grateful for the opportunity to be a part of it. We completely understand that after 18 years and 4 generations of creators, Red vs. Blue has changed a lot. As Family Shatters releases this fall, I encourage everyone to give this little detour from the main series a shot before we head back to season 19. If you want to support us, share this message, amplify positive voices, as well as critical voices. If you see harassment taking place or threats to the health and safety of others, report it using conduct@roosterteeth.com. I know it seems like an impossible task, but for every anonymous voice that seeks to hurt someone in this community, there's an opportunity to show the community love. I hope that we can keep this dialogue open as new RvB content launches and look forward to how it is received. If you've read this all the way to the end, thank you for the opportunity for me as a leader to stand up for the talented people I am fortunate enough to work with and advocate for their health and safety. I am hopeful for the exciting future we have together in RvB and the variety of content we are creating at Rooster Teeth. Work hard, be kind, have fun. So, I mean, I don't know what everyone else's opinion of that is. That sort of just felt like a press release to me. It's all about every time they mention someone, they have to talk about how great they are and how fun it is to work with them, and then they go into talking about the show and how proud of the show they are and how they're working to make it the best thing there is. So, I mean, it's sore. It's kind of, coming from the co-head, it means a little bit more for anyone that's kind of going through this, I guess. But I don't feel like anything that was really addressed was really specifically called out or talked about, or if there was talking about the only line of dialogue that was open was about harassment or everything. And he was Torian's post. He was talking about if you have an issue, take it up with the creators or people at take it up with people at Rooster Teeth. So You know, it's just such a tricky balance to try to like figure out a way to interact with people and take like hear criticism, but also filter out people because people are just not good at voicing an opinion without just being an asshole. I mean, really, there's only a certain amount of times you see someone who actually can say that. Other people will just go, "This sucks," or "This is absolute trash," or they go even worse and talk about how they like talk about harming someone that has made something, which is obviously ridiculous. But yeah, I it just seems like this is a story that is sort of happening over and over again when it comes to covering Rooster Teeth, where someone had a really bad experience working there, they've been threatened, they've been harassed, and then they kind of move on. Or you know, like in Fiona's case, she kind of sat in that harassment and was working at RT for a while, now has moved on to G4 and is really taking a step back in content. So yeah, I think I'm just starting, as time has gone on, I'm starting to sort of really feel the change in Rooster Teeth. And I don't know, it's starting to seem like I mean, it already is a much different company than whenever I first started watching, but it's starting to really turn that corner for me for some reason. I'm still hopeful that once they're fully back in the office and they're making content in person in the way that they used to, that things will improve again. I mean, Camp Betrayal is I love that show, so that's a really good first step. So that's my hope. But right now, I'm definitely, I don't know. This feels like a really really big downtime in RT, and I don't know. I know we've talked about it 1,000 times in doing this show, but I just don't see how you can get rid of so many people, so many prominent on-screen talent, and so many people behind the scenes, and do so much shuffling, and then keep everything intact. I mean, I almost feel like it sort of feels like that RT is starting at, you know, they're not at the starting block because they do have that base of people that'll sort of elevate them and push them forward. But for the most part, it just feels like they're sort of they have to like rebuild the audience, and like this is what the new stuff is, and this is what the content is, and I think the only thing that we'll really see a change is if they get sold by Warner, and I believe anyway that we would start to see some different content coming out. Now that could be completely wrong. Maybe Warner is completely hands off right now. Who knows? I doubt that, but yeah, I just, as a company that's gone through so many iterations and so many people running it, and well, I guess not so many people running it, but you know, like with the founders that were there, and then now you have Full Screen, and then what was it, Otter Media, and the whole chain of command that goes up to Warner Media. It feels, you know, it just feels like a different place now. So, and I guess, as I usually say, only time will tell, but I'm always hopeful. I talked to someone in our comments where I just said that, you know, there's still a lot of people that work there that I'm a fan of, and I sort of root for them, and I'm hopeful that things kind of turn around. And it's undeniable that there is it's very different, as everything is very different, and not everything that they're doing is something that I'm a fan of or that I really like. But I'm just sort of remaining optimistic and sort of just pulling for all the people who have been there for a long time that I've known for, you know, since the beginning, or maybe not since the beginning, but just people who have really integrated themselves and become a real part of the, you know, I guess the on-screen family, I guess, because that's all we see as viewers. But I pull for them, and I hope things can turn around, and you know, just bring Bernie back, and everything will be fine. So I already talked about this way longer than I thought I would, but moving on really quickly. This one didn't really come as much of a surprise given everything that's happening, but CHUMP is coming to an end. Like I said, this wasn't something that I was necessarily thought would happen right now, but I'm not taken off guard by it because, well, let me read Jeremy's tweet first because he mentioned what I was about to say. So he said, just announced, and this is on Twitter, just announced on the live show that with me staying in the Northeast, CHUMP is coming to an end. We have 2 final episodes on the 18th and 25th of August. Very happy the show is going out on a high note. Thank you all so much for making the show amazing. So, what I was going to say was, with him moving to the Northeast, I mean, and staying there, it just seemed like as things, you know, I know COVID sort of is ramping up with the Delta variant again, but with things at least looking like, you know, we could go back to some level of normal, it seems like things, moving back to the studio, if he's not going to be in studio, CHUMP is just not the same show. I mean, nothing that really RT has been making is the same over, Zoom or whatever video chat that they're using versus being in person. But even beyond that, looking at the views of CHUMP over, look at the last 3 episodes. The last one has 15,000 views. The one from the week before has 13,000. The one before that has 24,000. So it's something that, I don't know what the threshold is for views anymore on YouTube. But that's obviously super low compared to what some of the other stuff does, or, I guess like their standard. It used to be like 100,000 views is where they sort of would axe shows if it got less than that. This is on the Rooster Teeth channel though, so I don't know how they treat that versus the Achievement Hunter channel, which is where I first heard about that rule. But still, it wasn't a show that got a lot of views. I know it's also a podcast, so I'm sure downloads and stuff like that factor in. And I also don't know how views on the site are, but it's something that it just seemed like it was sort of hurting view-wise on YouTube. And again, with him not being in Austin, it kind of felt inevitable that it was going to be dwindling down and more than likely would end. Again, I didn't think it was going to happen so soon, but it did. So CHUMP is no longer going to be around after, what did I say? Was it 25th of August. So beyond that, there's only one more thing I was going to mention. And this was just a real quick thing. And I'm not a fan of wrestling, but again, this is one of those random side things that pops up that I just find either like funny or like, oh, that's kind of cool. And so I figured it was worth mentioning on here. So I don't watch wrestling. I used to when I was like in 6th grade or something, but, so there's a wrestler, I guess his name is Darby Allen. I sound like the oldest man. He wrestles for AEW, and apparently they collaborated with him to make his new wrestling entrance, which again was an avenue that I just never even considered would be a thing. So, was caught off guard by it and just thought it was kind of funny and kind of cool and should mention here. So, that's going to do it for this week's episode. I know I actually went on for longer than I thought I would about the whole, Torrian and director criticism thing, which again keeps coming up every week. But thank you for listening, everybody, and thank you for everyone who has been subscribing and everything. We'll be back in another 2 weeks for another episode of RT Talk, and eventually we'll get Doug back. But until I kind of get a longer list of things, I've just been kind of rolling solo. But if you miss Doug, he is on Out in the Grapes, so he's on every week. And this past week we did the Bachelor Party episode, which audio-wise was trash because nothing we hooked up worked, but was still a fun time for us to have all of our friends there. So listen to that, and if not, then just we'll talk at you next week or in 2 weeks, next episode. And that's it. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.